Hi everybody! We've been spending time learning about the formation of our government and the structure of our legal system. Today I wanted to spend some time discussing the power of judicial review and the case that solidified the Constitution as a supreme law in the land, and that put the courts in the position of having the ultimate authority to declare laws unconstitutional. All of this is important for you to understand how courts have the authority to create law through cases, and how precedent has the ability to bind future decisions. Of course, this lesson has to start off with the Constitution. You've learned that the Constitution created three separate but equal branches of the government. Article 1 created the legislative branch, Article 2 created the executive branch, and Article 3 created the judicial branch, my favorite. So some have argued that because of the equality in rank, that each branch should be free to interpret the Constitution as it sees fit. But practically speaking, this would create confusion and potential legal disaster. Someone has to have the final say when it comes to interpreting the meaning of the Constitution. Enter the case of Marbury versus Madison, that was decided by the United States Supreme Court in 1803. First, let me tell you a little bit about the facts of the case so that you can understand the context of the decision. Thomas Jefferson won the presidential election in 1800, defeating John Adams. Before Jefferson took office in March of the next year, Adams and Congress passed the Judiciary Act of 1801, which created new courts and added judges and gave the president more control over the appointment of judges to the federal courts. The act essentially was an attempt by Adams to stack the courts with his appointments before he left office. So he created a bunch of new positions for judges and appointed his supporters to the positions. These positions were confirmed by the Senate, but the positions were not valid until their commissions were delivered by the Secretary of State. William Marbury was one of Adams' appointments to the position of the Justice of Peace, but Marbury's commission was not delivered before Adams left office. Marbury had to petition the new Secretary of State, who was James Madison, to deliver his appointment. So that is how the case came to be named Marbury versus Madison. It was the battle over a delivery of a job. Marbury couldn't work as Justice of the Peace until his commission was delivered by Madison. Marbury petitioned the court for a writ of mandamus, which is an order compelling Madison to deliver his commission. So those are the facts. The court had to decide whether it could order Madison to deliver the papers for Marbury's job. Now, what happened in this case, and why are we talking about it 200 years later? Well, I'm so glad you asked. In this case, the Supreme Court engaged in a detailed analysis of Article 3 of the Constitution. If you will remember, that is the article of the Constitution that created the judicial branch. The article created the Supreme Court, and it also outlined the powers that the Supreme Court should have. In Marbury, the justices looked closely at the powers that the drafters of the Constitution had given the courts, and came up with the holding that the court alone has the power to review laws and hold them to be constitutional or unconstitutional. Listen to the words of the court that decided Marbury versus Madison. It is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. So what does this mean? It means that the Supreme Court has the power of judicial review exclusively. The court has the authority to review a law to see whether it is in line with the Constitution. If not, the law cannot exist. Remember, this is because of Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause. Specifically, with the facts of Marbury versus Madison, the court found that Madison's refusal to deliver Marbury's commission was illegal, but it did not order Madison to deliver Marbury's commission. Instead, the court held that the Judiciary Act that Marbury brought his suit under was unconstitutional, and that Marbury couldn't use it to bring his claim to the Supreme Court because the act attempted to extend the court's jurisdiction beyond what the Constitution provided. We'll talk about jurisdiction soon, but what you need to take away and remember from this case is that the power of judicial review is the power for the court to review governmental actions to see if they are constitutional. This power was solidified through the case of Marbury versus Madison, and it gives the courts a very important job in upholding the Constitution as the supreme law in the land. So now if someone asks you about judicial review and why the Constitution is the ultimate law in our country, hopefully you will be able to educate them on precedent from Marbury versus Madison. Thanks for watching.